Have you ever heard a car salesman say anything along the lines of 90 miles per gallon? Most likely not, okay? Well, good evening. My name is Ryan Taylor, and I'm a senior at Richmond County Daily Journal. So I'll start out with the paper. Carl Benz was a guy who was a pioneer of gas-powered vehicles. And his first electric gas automobile, was in 1883. Okay, but this guy Robert Anderson of Scotland actually created the first electric vehicle, and that was in the 1830s. So that's surprising. And the trend that may be driving electric vehicles today is along the lines of global warming, and whether it be a trend or a theory or a fact, can't confirm that, but it's definitely driving the way of electric transportation. So, along the lines of efficiency and cost, electric vehicles tend to cost a whole lot more than your gas-powered counterparts, mostly initially. So the Chevy Volt costs $32,000 MSRP, and the Chevy Cruze of the same is about equivalent is $17,000. So, but the Cruze can have a range of over 300 miles, but the Volt can only go 100 to 200. However, the gas for the Cruze is considerably higher than the $2 to $4 charge up for the Volt. Now, the fact is, with electric transportation, most people thinks it doesn't harm the environment. However, where does the electricity come from? It comes from the same power plants that are powering your lights. It's coal and gas. So that harms it, and the efficiency is actually it's related to the amount of coal power plants and nuclear power plants that are in the area. So the areas such as like Wisconsin, where there's more coal power plants than nuclear, such as here, it's actually less efficient to have an electric vehicle than a gas vehicle. So about the future, obviously technology is increasing almost every day, it seems like. So in the near future, it may be a great option to source more solar power farms and things like that. So I'll start with the proof. For my senior product, I had two mentors, unlike most people. One was Jake Elder. He's a maintenance manager at Cascades. The other one is Brock Honeycutt. He is the project planner for Cascades. And the product that I decided to create was an electric go-kart to prove that it's easy to do. So I originally came up with this idea because I wanted to have requirements for myself. I wanted to build something that was out of my comfort zone. I had nothing to do with electricity or mechanical things up to this point. So it was quite out of my zone altogether. And you'll hear about that from me. So before we started creating it, you had a plan. Okay, you needed to know what you needed, such as a motor, tires, bearings, and things along that line, and things I wanted. Things I wanted were more specific than the needs, such as things like I wanted the gas and the brakes on the steering wheel itself, much like most racing go-karts. However, in the end, not all dreams come true. So we had to think about how we get such these things. So a lot of it was searching online for go-kart accessories and parts. And it turns out bearings are hard to find. So we'll go into pictures. Obviously, the first step in doing anything is getting the base. And this is actually a 1988 model go-kart from my stepfather, who used to race in the 90s with his son. And this has been sitting outside for 20 years. So yeah, it's considerably rusty. And there's another angle, and finally cleaned up. So before you actually get to putting anything on this, you have to clean it up, don't you? So took everything off. And surprisingly, those wheels are not easy to get off at all with that one. So in order to get this thing moving, you kind of have to have a motor. So the first attempt that we took at finding a motor was this motor scooter for handicaps. And it turns out that motor doesn't have enough torque. It wouldn't pull the weight. So we got this dirt bike, and that's what we're going for, this motor right here. And end up taking the motor and the chain and the sprocket right off of that. So how do you stop it? And took a look at the brakes on the original go-kart, and they were hydraulic brakes. So they had pistons moving, and metal sitting outside for 20 years is not very good. So the pistons were completely frozen. So ended up we have to get the brakes off the dirt bike. And here's a little bit cleaned up. I painted it, and the motor is sitting about where it is right now. So, in order to find these parts, well, you can't necessarily find every part, just as a brake rotor. So, I had to take that off the dirt bike because we ended up using dirt bike brakes, but the inside diameter was not the same size as the axle, so it had to be machined to fit that. And we ended up using the old mount from the go-kart that was original. So I had to sand that down heavily. And finally I had to get my mentor to machine the part for me due to cascade requirements to be able to fit that. And same with the sprocket mount. However, we'll talk about the bearings a little bit more. I knew the measurements and how to find them, but the company that made the bearings that were originally on it went out of business. And there was only one of that similar bearing for the rear bearings on the entire internet. But however, the front ones were much easier. Thank you. So here's after it's machined. These are the parts that we had to machine, this and that. And here's the setup. So you have the motor and the brakes and all this, the batteries and everything, but how do you get it all working? You have to draft it a little bit first. So we use this rope to hopefully tie down the motor, which in the end did not quite work. It had way too much torque. And at first we started using direct power from the batteries to the motor, but it would jump way too much. So we ended up having to think of a way to reduce that. So first thing comes to mind is a potentiometer. It's basically a wire wrapped around metal that as you increase the contact point from one to the other connection, it reduces the resistance to increase the power flowing to the motor. However, we had a 100 ohm potentiometer rated at 100 watts, and turn it all the way up after we finally get a load on it, and it burned. So I had to go to backup plan and end up ordering a new throttle that would actually fit the dirt bike, so we'd be able to put it on here. Now, another part that we definitely had to machine was the motor bracket. Obviously, this is a really old model, and I'm also converting it to electric, so there's nothing on the market. But thankfully, the same model of go-kart, someone at Cascades had it. So the motor bracket on that was very similar to what I needed, and we only had to make a few adjustments. But this is a little draft of it. Had to use wood blocks and cut out a little bit to hold it down, just to get an idea of what we needed. And that's the final product. It's actually made out of aluminum alloy. And the all-thread bolts on the bottom and the top, all you have to do is tighten them and move them to tighten and loosen the chain if anything happens. So, the throttle on a dirt bike is mounted on a cylindrical thing. So how do you get that on a go-kart that doesn't have any of that? Well, turns out we had to use the steering wheel, or get the handlebars off the dirt bike. So, but how do you mount it on the go-kart? So we ended up having to makeshift forge, so to speak, and heat up the metal hard enough to bend it, and then finally cut it to the thing. Also, the brakes, they didn't quite fit. They're built for a dirt bike, and there's a little metal piece on the dirt bike that the brakes mount to be able to clip onto the rotor to slow down the dirt bike, obviously. And there was one bolt hole on the go-kart that the straight metal piece would fit to, but it would hit the axle as it went across. So we had to get that super hot and bend it in an S shape to be able to go across the axle and bolt down again. So there's the makeshift forge. It's powered by an air compressor, so to speak, of basically an air mattress. And put it under the bricks. There's 2 slits in the bricks on the bottom, and it fuels the charcoal extremely hot because you're getting all that air. This does not actually work on this computer, sadly. It's just a video of me driving it about 2 weeks ago.
The arm. That's how you broke your arm.
No. Sorry about that. I actually got one of the teachers, Miss Grooms, you may know her. She actually drove it. She had fun. So, a little bit of statistics about this cart. We had a thing called a kilowatt. It's not the kilowatt in terms of power. It's actually a device where you plug it in and then plug whatever you're going to use into that same thing. And it measures how much power is used. And whenever you plug in how much it costs per kilowatt hour, you can see how much money you spent. So we use this charging all 3 batteries of the go-kart, and it turns out it was 8.4 cents. So at a range of 2 miles, it's 4.2 cents a mile. And in equivalence to a gas-powered car running on a gallon of gas that's $3.50, that's 83 miles to the gallon. Yeah. And considering I only spent $120 and a little bit more, a little bit less than $100, that's pretty good. And that's all.
What do you want to do when you graduate?
Well, I'm going into engineering, hopefully.
Well, I guess you've already figured out that some of the obstacles you face and some of the things you had to do, the creativity, is what will set you apart in engineering school. A lot of engineers go to school and they don't know how to use their hands. They're smart, but the ones that know how to actually do things and build things, machine things, forge things, are the ones that really set up. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Ron, did you have fun with me?
Oh, yes. It's fun to drive too.
I'm jealous, because I was hoping you had it for us to test
I'll just
drive.
come in with the-
Yeah, it'd be hard to get up.
But you wait till I see Miss Grooms, I'm gonna tell her she should have invited all of us to come do
It's
that.
probably more fun than my Prius.
So who sacrificed the motor scooter or the, wait, the wheelchair first or the?
Okay, I got the wheelchair from a lady in Fayetteville. I paid $20 for it, which obviously we did not use. And the dirt bike came from a family member. They live in just barely across the South Carolina border, and they just had it in their garage. They said it didn't work. So I ended up getting all that.
How many horsepower was the electric motor use?
I think it's 4.
4 horsepower. And the batteries, you had 3 batteries.
3 batteries are
In series or in parallel?
Series.
Okay, so you're getting the most use out of it.
Yeah, they're 12-volt batteries, a total of 36 gas hours.
You can tell the difference in the questions. He's like, series or parallel, and I'm like, was it fine?
Did the batteries heat up when you were running it? They did not. Okay.
Is it gonna happen?
It goes around 14 miles per hour. That's pretty fast.
That's pretty
It's faster
fast.
than what most people expected.
Huh? So this is great.
Yes, that's exciting. I missed the actual Tuesday, I didn't get to drive it.
Where do you want to go to college at?
I applied to NC State to begin with. I'll probably end up applying to a few more places like Tulane and Minnesota School